Live. Here we go. We are live. What is up, everybody? Aaron the Dog back with breakdown number one of the day, the only one of the day, the last of the week, actually. It's the PFL Challenger Series 4 Featherweight edition. Last week we had the women's lightweight division. Those fights were actually pretty good. I'll be honest, I was surprised. I did get Genderova wrong. It was my first wrong pick on the Challenger Series this year. But yeah, it was not bad. I was kind of surprised Montague didn't get a contract. I thought she deserved one. I thought three of the ladies honestly did. So kind of curious what they're going to do there. But I'm not really sure what the parameters are for what earns a contract, what doesn't on the Challenger Series yet. So how you doing, Lucky?
I'm doing great. Looking forward to getting into some featherweights today. A couple familiar faces on this card, a couple new guys that I wasn't really familiar with. And yeah, it should be a good show on Friday night. Got a lot of MMA this weekend.
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised by the kind of roster they got for the featherweights. This is one that before I looked at it, I just assumed it was going to be one of the more stacked Challenger Series. And I'm not sure if it is or not. I mean, like the welterweights were really strong that first week, I think, and that maybe set my expectations. Maybe they just have a few more at featherweight, so maybe the roster's not quite as needed for additional fighters. I'm not exactly sure, but either way, I think the fights themselves are still good. It's just we've got some 2-0, 2-0 guys. Got a short notice Boston Salmon making his return to featherweight, which is, we'll see about that. But we'll get into it now. As I said, all these fights are in the featherweight division. I'm going to start with a Rufus Sport representative taking on an Extreme Couture representative now. So two very good camps, both guys young in their career. Scotty Stockman, 3-1, taking on Brian Zurcher. He spells Brian very interestingly, Brian. But Brian, young in his career, 2-0. Both his wins coming by submission, has not fought since August of last year. So he's had quite a bit of time off. He's 26 years old. Not a huge featherweight, not a small one, about 5'10". Seems to have some kind of longer arms. I wasn't able to get a reach on him because didn't see that with the Combate tape I watched. It just kind of started right when the tape started. So he does have experience in Combate Global, albeit against an 0-0 opponent in Tyler Hinton. Tyler took him down quite a bit and got him in some pretty deep positions, but by the second round, you could see Tyler had nothing left. He put everything into that first round. It was his debut. He was a wrestler, so Brian was controlled with the wrestling. Almost got him in the triangle at the end of the first round, and then got him in the triangle at the second round. So kind of lets you know the level of competition he's facing. I think in general, you don't see the triangle finishes towards the higher ends of competition. And you definitely don't see like a fighter being able to get the same technique basically twice in a row. So he does have two submissions, but he was losing most of that fight to Tyler, his other fight against a 1-3 opponent. Both coming last year. I like that he's out of Extreme Couture. He's got a lot of good training partners. You can even see in the Instagram messages some of the guys who are talking about working with him and respect him. He's definitely working with very good level of guys over at Elite XC. And, with this being Rufus Sport, I think it's going to be interesting. Scotty Stockman reminds me, it's a very, very random guy to compare him to, but reminded me of Matt Mooney, who just like very aggressive with his striking, puts himself in some pretty crazy positions. Gonna look spectacular against a level of competition, but once he gets above that level, I'm not sure the things he's doing are going to be working or effective. He has shown on the ground to kind of follow his opponents to the ground after the strikes, and that's one of the ways I really can see Brian actually winning this fight is kind of getting caught or going with a shot, going to the ground, pulling guard, something to initiate his submissions off his back. He does seem comfortable with that. And Scotty does kind of leave himself in positions. I noticed he's getting away with it at this level. But he's an exciting guy. Both guys are still younger at 28 for Scotty here. Rufus Sport's been, he's been very proud of that. Faced a much better level of competition. The Artur Walcott Cisse fight was really fun to watch too, and that was against a decent opponent with Valor. So, I mean, this is one honestly that I could see Scotty putting himself into a position and getting submitted, but most likely that's not going to happen. I think most likely Scotty's going to put his hands on him. He also does have good wrestling. I could see him just kind of hanging out around the half guard, position, working a low ground and pound. I'll take Scotty in this one. This probably is my least confident pick on the night, though. I do think there's a realm where Brian ends up getting another submission where, it's just like Scotty posts his arms quite a bit. I could see an arm bar type of setup. There's a few fights I kind of saw that same positioning. So Scotty's over at Rufus Sport, though. He's working with really good level of talent, and he seems to be very hungry. So I'll go with Scotty, but this is my least confident pick on the card, actually. What are your thoughts on this fight?
Yeah, he's training at Rufus Sport, and you never really know when these younger prospects have that on Tapology. You're like, maybe they just did a camp there, but if you go look, he looks like he's really in there, training with a lot of really good guys. Looks to be working closely with Anthony Pettis and some other up-and-coming prospects they have at that gym. So I feel like he's in a really good spot training-wise. And his father was a Golden Gloves boxer, and it looks like he kind of took up that mantle, the family tradition. He became a Golden Gloves champion in Oregon himself, and he has really good boxing in his fights. You can see that. Rips to the body really hard. I really like the way that he goes to the body with the striking. And we've seen some pretty decent wrestling from him as well. You mentioned he's a good wrestler. His top pressure is pretty good. He's able to maintain control pretty well. And he is just a physically strong guy in general. Ground and pound is good and heavy when he gets people down there. He was on the wrestling team at Southern Oregon University in college, coming up against Brian Zurcher here. And Zurcher's a guy who was a 3-3 amateur, kind of went back and forth between wins and losses there. And he's now 2-0 as a pro with a 100% finish rate, 2 submissions. He's finished all of his wins as an amateur as well over at Extreme Couture. But the pro competition level has just been pretty low, quite frankly. I mean, a 1-3 fighter who's now 1-5, a debuting guy. And, in that fight, he definitely was not winning before he got the triangle. We can say that much. The stand-up can be a little bit wild. I feel like the boxing is going to be heavily in the favor of Scotty in this one. Obviously, you kind of hit the nail on the head. The caveat for Brian Zurcher, is that he could probably get a submission if he finds the right position. I mean, but the grappling still, he had his back taken within 30 seconds in his last fight, got absolutely dominated in the first round, back controlled majority of the time. His opponent got full mount near the end of the round, did finish the round with that triangle locked in, as you said, and eventually got it in the second round. But I don't know how much I really want to bank on a guy being able to get a submission off of his back, especially wherein I think he's taking probably the toughest match of his career to date. I think that Stockman is the better striker. I think he's the better wrestler. And I actually feel pretty good about him in this spot. I think he opens up the card with a win.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that I feel bad. I just feel pretty good on my other kind of reads on this card. So this is just the one that I feel like if there's one to slip on the banana peel, it would be Scott. Scotty seems very confident in himself, and he definitely is one of these guys. He's over at Rufus Sport. I actually listened to an interview with him, a pretty lengthy interview too today.
Yeah, I know the one you're talking about. Yeah.
And he talked quite a bit about how he had to adjust to Rufus Sport, and like at first it was just like, oh my God, Anthony Pettis. So it's just, I think he's going to be really focused. I just don't see kind of the scenario of me picking Brian based on a slip up. Otherwise, also Brian was taking on essentially a bantamweight in his last fight. Tyler Vinton looked very, very small. And again, Scotty's much bigger, much more physical. So yeah, I mean, I'm still decently confident in it. It's just I'm more so confident in my other picks on the card. So, but yeah, we're both with Scotty there. He's a -200 favorite right now. I think that's very reasonable. And after kind of talking to you, I feel a little better about that. +170 on Brian. I think it needs to be much higher for me to consider that with my route to victory for Brian. So both agreeing there on Scotty Stockman. Great name too. Like just a real solid, like seems like a name like you'd see in like an MMA movie. It's like, oh, he's going up against Scotty Stockman. Like the stockbroker, Scotty the stockbroker Stockman or something. But I'm gonna stop writing my screenplay now. Move on to the next fight. Du Guillaume Lee taking on, it's the return of Boston Salmon. Oh boy, boom. Boy, has he had a rough go since getting signed with the UFC. you want to talk about poster boy for a guy who got signed to UFC too soon? Boston Salmon, I think, is your guy. He's now 7-3, and his last win, by the way, was an absolutely brutal illegal knee he took over a year ago. I can't believe this is in July of 2020. Is that right? That's crazy.
I believe so. Yeah.
I remember that fight like it was yesterday against Sean West with LFA at LFA 84. Yeah, Justin Gonzalez and Childers headlined that.
It was a good card, to be honest. If I'm remembering,
it was a great card. Yeah, I remember that card. It was fantastic. And I remember this fight very, very clearly. Sean West was kind of putting it on Boston quite a bit before that. That's the dirty kind of truth about it. It was a super illegal knee. Unfortunately, Boston got knocked out like 3 times in that fight, essentially, as a result of that. He was getting rocked before that. He was on his way out, and then one of the worst illegal knees you can ever see. If you want to look it up, you can look it up. It's all over the place. Sean West celebrates after not knowing it was illegal. Somehow he didn't know it was illegal. I'm not really sure how he didn't, but I really don't think he knew when it happened. And, it's kind of funny. Not funny, but we were talking about with our LFA breakdown, Tamaris Vidal and her illegal knee kind of reaction from her fighter to win her fight. This was a much harsher illegal knee. So I guess Boston earned to win if you want to look at it that way. But I really do look at this fairly or unfairly as a 3-fight losing streak for him that he's on, and he's been put away in all 3 essentially. He was knocked out twice in the UFC, pretty badly too. Khalid Taha in 25 seconds. Yes, Khalid Taha was on sauce for that fight, but it is what it is. And he just got absolutely hooked to oblivion. And then Randy Costa knocked him out with punches, not kicks, punches, which is, he's an underrated boxer, I think, but still. Then it was out of the UFC. The Sean West fight happened, almost a year after his 2 UFC fights. So pretty inactive for the last several years because of concussions, I would have to assume. And yeah, it's just, for me, he has that win against Ricky Tercios 5 years ago on the Contender Series. It was barely enough for him to get the contract. I was kind of surprised when he got the contract. I think his name being Boston Salmon helped a lot. And in all seriousness, I think they saw a marketing opportunity, and that's what happened. He was, I believe, like a former Golden Gloves champion, supposed to be very touted for his boxing. Usually fights at 135. He's now moving up to 145 on short notice to take on a legit striker in Du Gyum Lee, the Wildling, or Wildling as he's known, 8-4. He's got legit striking for sure. He's only 5'7", but he's going to have the longer reach, nearly a 70-inch reach. Boston Salmon's is in the 66 range, I believe. He has not fought since October of 2021 with UAE. He did lose that fight to Ali Al-Kasai. I remember that fight quite vividly. It was a competitive fight. It really was. Ali, looks really good against competition that's not in the UFC. So, I'll give him credit there. This was also basically on Ali's home turf. So, definitely a tough situation to go into. I think he gained quite a bit from that. He does have a loss to Mark Striegel, which is a little bit of a concern for me just because I don't rate Mark Striegel very well. And he was put away by him. Had a win over Rolando Dai, knockout with UAE, a knee finish of another undefeated 4-0 opponent. Really good striker, and I don't love the idea of Boston Salmon coming back up a weight class on short notice against an aggressive and diverse striker that Lee is. I think Lee puts him away. I think it's another knockout against Boston Salmon. And for me, I'm pretty confident in this one. I think that Lee's going to be much bigger, much longer. And I just don't love the inactivity and results that Boston Salmon's had since 2017. I can't roll with them here.
Yeah, this I really can't see this fight going 3 rounds any way it goes. Both guys have been a little bit shaky lately. 3-3 in the last 6 for Lee. Had losses to Striegel and now Casey, like you mentioned. But the highs of that run were really high. I mean, he won the featherweight belt in his debut on UAE Warriors with a round 1 knockout, then defended it with another knockout. He's got an 88% finish rate. He has 5 knockouts. And he's, that's going to be the name of the game here on Friday night. He's going to try to knock this guy out, and that's probably one of the most, probably the path to victory that holds the most value on this fight, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
All 3 of his latest wins have come via round 1 knockout, and Boston Salmon, on the other hand, has been getting knocked out quite a bit. I mean, he has decent boxing. He has heavy shots. You can really hear the thud when he lands in the striking, but he can just get cracked too easily now, and he's been KO'd in 2 out of his 3 losses. He does have 4 of his own knockouts. Hasn't gotten any of those since 2015, though.
Right.
And he's 2-3 since 2016, and one of those wins was a disqualification. So
where he got knocked out.
Yeah, more like 1-4, and like he got rocked. He was probably, without the illegal knee, about to get knocked out. Right there. He got rocked bad, fell to his knees. It kind of looked like he was about to have another KO loss there, then gets hit with a bad illegal knee and just absolutely gets sent to the shadow realm there, man.
Yeah.
So knocked out 2 times in a row in the UFC in the first round. Then fights are really close. Round 1 with Sean West. I feel like Sean West probably was up 10-9 going into the second, and then just gets cracked to the point where it looked like it was going to be another KO loss, and then takes probably the worst shot that he's taken over the course of his whole career.
Yeah.
Grappling-wise, he stuffed 5 takedowns against Tercios. Didn't really see him grapple much in the UFC. Obviously, that stint lasted less than 3 minutes.
Right.
Overall. Saw a little bit of clinch work on LFA, but yeah, I seriously doubt this one goes 3 rounds. I think, it's probably going to be Lee that finds that knockout. I could see, if you want to bet Boston Salmon, probably round 1 KO at like plus 700. That would be the best bet on that side, but I don't mind Lee knockout. I don't mind Lee round 1. I don't mind the unders here, and I don't mind the fight doesn't go the distance. If I got to pick a side, I'm going to side with Lee to get a finish in this fight.
Yeah, I co-sign on most of that, and I was quite surprised by the odds. I get Lee is still 3-3 in his last 6. I understand, but there's a way that he lost that is not how Boston Salmon's been losing. Minus 120 for Lee. I think that's a great price there as well. And yeah, I do think it goes inside the distance. So up a weight class for Boston, not loving that choice, the short notice. Also, I think it's going to be a long night for Boston, but I'll be honest, I'm kind of rooting for him, even though I'm going to be betting against him. Like, it would be one of those bets. You don't like to lose bets, but be a cool story to see Boston have a little redemption here. I just think he got to UFC too soon and, paid kind of the ultimate price in a lot of ways. So hopefully it's a good fight. I think it will be exciting. Next fight here, definitely a guy that we're both familiar with, Edwin Cooper Jr., kind of one of those LFA prospects who, from kind of the first time we both saw him, I think we knew he was going to be moving up to the bigger leagues sooner rather than later. Taking on Troy Lampson. Troy Lampson, definitely a guy I've watched tape on when doing tape for other fighters before. I know I've seen this guy's weird tribal tattoo before. I've seen this guy's fight style before. Kind of, like a Rich Clementi at home, pretty boy as well. And Troy Lampson here, 13-4. He's from Flint, Michigan. I'm a Michigan man myself. He's fighting out of East Lansing in Hard Knocks 365. That might be another reason he looks familiar. I've probably seen him in my hometown before. So let me be, cautious on how I break down this fight. He's coming off 2 straight losses. So I think it's really weird how many of these Challenger Series invitees have lost their last fight and are getting invited here for this week. It's kind of weird. Lost his last 2. It was to Alex Munoz. He went to a decision there. Very good wrestler. And then he obviously stepped up to a catchweight fight with Jesse Ronson. Jesse Ronson is a huge, strong guy who's failed drug tests in the UFC. So let's just assume that he was not passing any drug tests with BTC 9 and got the rear naked choke in the first round. I mean, Troy just had no chance of taking him down in that fight at all. I mean, that was a crazy matchup for him, and just went about how you expect. The wins over very, very low level of competition for the most part. The losses all to notable names, Justin James and Nick Brown, the other two. There's never going to be shame in losing to Nick Brown. That, is obvious. He beat Kyle Prepolak. That's probably the fight I remember doing tape on for Kyle. It was a very competitive fight. I remember in that one, Kyle Prepolak back in the day was in the UFC. It's kind of funny to think about that. But overall, he's a scrapper. He kind of reminds me of like a Tony Kelly guy who's like got decent stand up, but he's trying to use his stand up to get to the takedowns, get to making this gritty. If he doesn't have a wrestling advantage, he loses the fights, as you can see from the losses here. And he does not have a wrestling advantage here against Edwin Cooper. I mean, it's just I think Edwin Cooper is at maybe not at the level of these guys yet, but he's definitely approaching a Justin James level, I think, and probably beyond that as he moves on his career. He's still only 5-1, so that is kind of one of my holdups here. The experience is going to be with Troy, but Edwin's looked really good at Jackson Winklejohn. Definitely a good, solid wrestler. 3 straight wins for him, all coming in LFA. Lost his LFA debut to a Sean Williams Cerveni. I'm not really familiar with him. Got armbarred in that fight. But otherwise, he's looked pretty dominant. The stand-up's improving. Robson Jr., he just overwhelmed physically throughout that fight. Robson at one point, or Hobson at one point, was a prospect out of Brazil. And then Andrew Johnston, the last fight, I mean, he didn't look spectacular. He did what he needed to do in that fight. I think that if Edwin wins really spectacularly, I really could see him getting a contract from this fight. So I think he's going to put a little more pedal to the metal, not just go through the motions and just go for the win. I think he's going to try to be more impressive here. And I think he can definitely do it. I think he can end up getting top position, wearing down Troy as this fight goes on, and getting a submission. But either way, I like Edwin. I most likely bet it inside the distance because I do think that at some point he finds a way to put Troy Lampson out of here. I think he's just much better than him, and I think in a scenario like this, he has to know that a decision isn't going to get him where he wants to go. So maybe a little more emphasis on the finish for Edwin. So I'll take Edwin Cooper. I think he dominates the wrestling, and on the feet, I think he's got the advantage. Just about everywhere I'd see the advantage for Edwin in this fight.
Yeah, I mean, Edwin Cooper Jr. is a guy that we've kind of seen come up from the ground up. He ccame to LFA. I believe he was 2-0, and he's been fighting pretty decent opponents for the level of his career that he's been at each time. He's actually one of my favorite prospects in the LFA. I really like to watch this guy fight, coming in on 3 straight wins and some very, very, very good performances over that span. And even in that fight where he lost, I mean, let's be honest, it wasn't really that competitive until he got armbarred, right? It was Edwin Cooper all day. There was no doubt who was going to win that first round. Gets caught in the armbar and gets tapped out. A learning experience. It is what it is. You got to be careful in those positions. And truly, we haven't really gotten to see almost any striking from him over the course of his career because he usually can just do whatever he wants with the wrestling. He's an amazing wrestler. He was a national champion in junior college, then went to Division I, wrestled at Iowa, had a lot of success there. And that's just kind of been the game plan for all of his fights so far, at least in the LFA. His top pressure is really, really heavy, really hard to get away from. He just sticks to guys. His ground and pound is good. Scrambles are good. He's finished 3 out of 5 wins. I mean, there were a couple points in his last fight I thought they maybe could have stopped it. Fight was just not competitive, to be honest. And Edwin Cooper Jr., a big featherweight, 6 feet tall, really good athlete. And he's coming in against another really big guy in Lampson here. You kind of touched on the resume, so I won't touch on that too much. But he's going to have quite the reach advantage here, I think. I mean, 75-inch reach, that's quite big. At 145, he's also 6'1". So 2 big guys here. He'll have about 3.5 inches of reach on Edwin Cooper Jr. I'm not all that impressed with his striking, I got to be honest. We don't really have much to compare it to with Edwin because he just doesn't use it almost ever. So it's kind of hard to say. But there's a 77% finish rate there for Lampson, 4 knockouts. We have seen him drop before, but we've never seen him finished by strikes, just by submissions. He has 6 submissions in his own right. He was also a college wrestler, did so at your favorite Michigan State, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, go green.
He's got a good wrestling base, but we have seen him get taken down before. And this kind of is an interesting matchup just because both of these guys are good wrestlers. And maybe we'll see Edwin pushed in a way that he hasn't yet in that wrestling, but I don't think he's going to get pushed so much to the point where he isn't able to kind of do his thing. I think a little bit more resistance, but I don't think quite enough to stop the Edwin Cooper Jr. train here. I think he's going to be the more explosive guy, applying pressure on the feet. And I think the wrestling is going to be competitive, but like I said, I mean, just not competitive enough to the point where I'm going to get off the Edwin Cooper Jr. side here. I got to edge to him being younger, being more active, and looking pretty damn good doing it.
Yeah, I can guarantee I've seen Troy Lampson at the Michigan Athletic Club in East Lansing before. I can guarantee I have gone to Meijer, been buying some produce, maybe getting a T-shirt. Meijer is like a Target with a grocery, like a nice grocery store in it, basically. They can go to 2 a.m., get a sweatshirt, get some beer, and get some chicken wings, all in the same place. Meijer's are great. I miss them here in D.C. But all the best to Troy in this fight. East Lansing 517 represent, but it does seem like the type of guy to beat Troy is someone who's a better wrestler, and I'm willing to bet Edwin is the better wrestler here. So it is a pretty sizable favorite here, minus 370 against a very experienced guy in Troy Lampson, who's been in there with very good level of competition. I'm not crazy about that price, honestly. I think that's quite risky. I'm a huge Cooper fan too, but that's one I would pass on.
Yeah,
Plus
I agree.
I didn't plus 290 Troy Lampson. I mean, yeah, I think it's not worth that price. Minus 400 is a lot. We're gonna move on. So far we're 3 for 3 in agreement. I will be shocked if we don't agree on this fight. This Barnett,
one, man. Oh, we may be frozen. I'm not sure if we lost Aaron or not here. Yeah, I guess so, Visceral. It's kind of looking like that at the moment. I guess I'll just start off this fight then.
My bad.
My bad. Good. Here we go.
Literally, I don't know what this new computer is killing me, dude. It's amazing. All I heard, it just kept repeating, Mike Barnett, man. Mike Barnett, man. I was like, man, he's really hammering home this Mike Barnett joke. Yeah. I'll just say real quick. This one to me is definitely one that I'm pretty confident in, just based on Mike Barnett, man, if I'm being honest. Mike Barnett is what is known in the business as a can crusher. That is what he is. It's simple as that. The level of competition Mike Barnett has faced is not at a very high level. 32 and a half years old out of Port City Combat Sports. I've just not been too impressed so far, plain and simple. Iron Mike Barnett. Yeah, Chico agrees with me here. He is 11-3. He won his last fight back in June with EFC. But it's when we look at the kind of level of competition that you're going to be pretty concerned for the most part. He's got a win over Clarence Brown. That is just like a given. This guy would fight Clarence Brown. Clarence Brown 2-10 now, as of last year at least. The wins over 0-1, 0-9, 21-40, 2-4, a 6-3 Max Mustaki, who I have heard of with Island fights. Anderson Hutchinson, split decision there. He was 7-1, but I watched that fight. It was ugly. And then 1-4, 1-3, 5-12. Lost to an 0-4 guy as an amateur. Lost to a 1-2 guy in his debut. Lost to Clay Harvinson in 2019. He lost to Clay Harvinson in 2019. That is Clay Harvinson of The Ultimate Fighter. What, like original season, right?
Way back when, man. And he had like 2 fights in the UFC or something after that. I don't think he won any, but
no, he did not. If you lost to Clay Harvinson in this decade, I can't roll with you like in a fight against anybody who is at least semi-decent. Mike Barnett actually was supposed to fight Boston Salmon back in the day at an Icon event that got canceled. That is the type of fight that Boston Salmon should have been coming back against. I would have much rather seen that. Ronaldo Exon, Guerrero, 17-5 for the Brazilian. 33 years old. He fights out of the Pitbull brothers. Hasn't fought since December of this year, so did fight more recently. 3 straight wins right away. A much higher level of competition here that he's faced. He's lost to Kyle Machado, which is not a bad loss at all back in the day. And then he's, for the most part, going to a decision in a lot of these fights, but he does have very good grappling that's been coming through over the last 3 straight fights. Actually, he's gotten 3 straight submissions. Both these guys did mention this breakdown on their Instagram, so I do appreciate that, or both Ronaldo and Mike. Mike was the first one to actually do it, so shout out to Mike, very active on the social media game today. And I respect all fighters, but this is Ronaldo Exon all day long. He's actually faced a level of competition that deems him worthy of being here. And I've just not been too impressed with what I've seen on Mike either, in all honesty. I think that Ronaldo gets this down to the ground and submits him.
Yeah, and we got Ronaldo Exon, Pitbull Brothers product. He's the featherweight champ in EFC right now. He's on a 3-fight win streak. He went over to EFC in 2019, fought 3 times, got the belt, 3 submission finishes. Just has a lot of good experience, and he's a good striker. He has some round 1 knockouts on his resume as well. All submissions so far that we've seen since coming to EFC. But he's had success on the feet as well in those fights. He's gotten knockdowns. I like the way his low kicks look. His ground game, you touched on it, very strong. Every single time he's stepped into the cage for EFC so far, he's demonstrated that for us. 3 fights and 2 of them with the title on the line. He's got a good muscular build as well at 145. Mike Barnett, on the other hand, you mentioned the loss to Clay Harvinson. He has a 73% finish rate. All of his finishes have been knockouts. Not the most technical guy out there, but he does have decent power. Body shots are pretty decent. The striking defense worries me a little bit. And just in general, I feel like Exon has fought much, much better competition here. Just watching the tape, he seems to be better just by the eye test. Resume seems to be better on paper. I just don't know that Barnett is going to have a whole lot for Exon anywhere that this fight takes place. I feel like his most likely path to victory is going to be a round 1 knockout early, just happen to catch him. But I agree with you here. I think that Exon is going to be able to get a finish here. I think it's probably going to be a submission. And I bet on Exon. I put him in a parlay with Scotty in the first fight, so that's my play for this card. I like Exon to win.
Yeah, fair enough. I agree there. Scotty and Exon, I think, is the most safe double up for sure. I'd put all 3 in. I'd put him in with Lee. And I'll do a full card parlay, but I'm not gonna risk a huge amount on it, which is amazing because when I first looked at this card before doing any research, I was like, okay, Cooper, he's my for sure guy. I know he's gonna. And after really doing the research, I do think that Cooper has a potentially the closest fight on the card. So we did agree at the end of the day. We have all the favorites for this Challenger Series, unfortunately, but it is what it is. You got to pick who's in front of you. I do like Lee as a good single bet also. I think that Lee inside the distance could be a very good Lee first round. I'm sure could pay pretty well as well. And I think both those are very likely. But that will do it for the PFL Challenger Series. Week 4, the featherweights. I will figure out with this new laptop what settings I need to get to so that I can stop having a little of the issues, but appreciate the patience and dealing with the technical difficulties. Is your PFL video out yet, Lucky?
It is. I recorded it super late last night and checked it up in the morning.
Nice. So, yeah, definitely check that out. I've said it a million times, but go subscribe to Lucky Locks Picks. He's going to have all the regional MMA over there. And again, it's a good listen as you're making your final decisions on bets. This one's a little easier to call with it being all the favorites, but at the same point, you gotta have your information. So for Aaron the Dog, for Lucky Locks Picks, until next week, week 5, I'm not sure what week 5 is. We will be back, but enjoy the fights. Aries fights are on right now. If you're looking for fights to watch on Fight Pass, then tomorrow we've got the full slate. We got the PFL, we got the LFA already on the channel, and then Bellator and UFC on Saturday, both on the channel as well. For Lucky Locks and Aaron, keep taking care of each other out there.